We got the whole leads team here today to help us give this presentation. So I'm actually doing very little speaking. So yeah, who's our first speaker? Neil. After me, it's Neil. Neil, how are you feeling? Are you ready?
Good,
Is your
yeah.
voice warmed up?
We'll see. We'll see how little speaking you do because you're a little more long-winded than I am, but it'll be good.
And Joanne Cunningham calling from the car. Amazing, Joanne. I love that. Nice work. Look at that. I love when people calling from the car. I hope you're in passenger seat.
Yeah.
So you're safely calling in from the car. Appreciate that.
No, it's just mirrored, taped to the steering wheel.
Yeah, and Jesse's giving some friendly pointers in the Slack there. You can, if you want to change your name, you can put your name and your company name behind it, just like Jesse has done. And feel free to say hi in the chat. Okay, we're going to dive right into the presentation. The presentation is probably going to take 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how long we talk. Then there's time for questions, and then we'll do introductions. I do want to remind everyone, we are live streaming this. This is live on YouTube as we speak. So remember that as we're going through it. Well, let's do it. Let's get started. I actually got the timer too. We're going to see how long this takes us. Okay, I am calling in today from Connecticut. I'm in the house. This is my parents' house. This is the house I grew up in. I'm literally calling in from my old bedroom that I grew up in.
Are those butterflies yours, Zach?
Those butterflies are new. I promise those are new. Anyways, I'm excited to be here. That my Wi-Fi might cut out, but Neil's ready to take over. It does. So let's get started. Summit 6 info session. I can't believe this is Summit 6. And we're really excited to welcome Manitoba for the first time to the summit. We got 4 streams. All right, we're going to tell you all about it through the process today. But I like to kick it off with our origin story. You know, TNT stands for Thursday Night Tradition, and we take our Thursday nights very seriously. Our philosophy as an organization: have fun, make friends, build companies. It's also a personal philosophy for how to live life, how life is meant to be lived. Meeting great people, building great relationships with them, building true connections, and then building great companies together. And so this is now week 173. We get together now in 5 cities across the prairies. Encourage you to join us tonight. I unfortunately won't be there tonight, but all of our leads will be there hosting the happy hour tonight. And it's really just an opportunity to have some fun, make some friends with your fellow entrepreneurs, other investors, other members of the Start community in general. And then the Investment Summit program is our unique program that we run every fall and every spring, and now sector summits in the winters, where we help to build companies and train new investors how to invest in awesome startups like the ones that we have here today with us. All right. I do want to thank our partners before we get into this. I'm just going to pause for a moment and highlight some of these because they're actually really valuable. Some of you might want to connect with some of these partners as we go through the process for the next few weeks here. So Applied Pharmaceutical Innovation, they are our key partner for the Life Sciences Summit. We are coming back. We're doing that again in the winter. If you or any of your friends are in the life sciences space, you might want to check that event out. It will be launching in January. Health Cities here in Edmonton is focused on digital health. Anybody with digital health technologies looking to, understand their regulatory pathway, understand how to best connect with those first customers, they are the group to talk to. We actually got 2 banks, BDC, Canada's venture bank. They got representatives across all of our chapters to reach out and support companies. They've got a venture capital fund. They offer lots of non-dilutive capital options. They're really kind of that venture bank for the entrepreneurs. And RBCX, which also there's the traditional banking. We bank with RBCX, but with RBC, I should say. But the RBCX team is really focused on, being the bank for entrepreneurs. RBC now also has a venture fund. I think that's all focused on later stage, like Series A, B, beyond. But they gave a session for us recently about all the non-dilutive lending options that they provide, and a lot of our companies are now getting things like loans and lines of credit from RBC. Our friends at Kingston Ross Parsnack is an accounting firm based in Edmonton, but really a regional prairie-wide accounting firm. And I love these guys. I don't know about anybody else, but whenever I talk to accountants, I always feel really, really sheepish and embarrassed because they're talking about terms I don't know, and they're telling me that I'm setting myself up for a massive tax liability, and I feel really dumb. But I love talking to our friends at KRP because they never feel that way. They just answer my tax questions like they're very logical, normal questions. And I feel great about it. They respond really quickly. They do personal, and they do a lot of corporate tax too. So sorry, I use them for my personal tax, but a lot of our companies in the TNT network use them for their corporate tax or accounting needs. And then CBRE, these are the guys to go to any size, any stage. You want to find office space, the CBRE team wants to help you. They have a soft spot for the startup community. Finding new office space is a time-consuming process. These guys do it with you slowly and find that space that works for you. And then just a quick shout out to Alberta Innovates, Prairies Can, and Innovation Saskatchewan for providing core funding to run these programs. And, one of the things that's really unique about us is that, as we're raising money for local startups like those you hear today, a big part of our focus is increasing the sophistication level of our local investor pool and getting, a broader and deeper pool of investors investing in prairie startups. And so we've got all these regional partners too, which I don't have time to go into, but I just want to, before I hand it off to introduce Neil, I just want to say, Neil is basically what we're talking about when we're talking about finding and creating new prairie investors. Neil built his career in the oil and gas space. He joined our very first summit back in the fall of 2020. And he became an ambassador right off the bat, helped us build out all of our operations in Calgary. He's now our Calgary lead. He's back for like his fourth summit, I think. And, when we talk about building out and converting more of our local pool of oil and gas professionals into the startup world, Neil Van de Monte, case in point. Neil, take it away.
All right, thanks, Zach. That was quite an intro. And just to clarify, I think this is Summit 7 that I'm going into here for me.
I've lost track, Neil. Unbelievable.
Oh my God.
Right.
But I do want to hang out on this slide for a little while. So it's been 2 years in Calgary and 2.5 years since Startup TNT kicked off their first investment summit in 2020. And we just passed the 50 mark in terms of companies that we've invested in with our awesome investors. So if you look at the screen here, you can see a ton of cool companies. And what I find most impressive is the variety of companies. You got straight up SaaS companies, you got deep tech, social impact, all the clean tech, prop tech, all the techs. You got B2B companies, B2C companies, and it's really cool to see that these are all sort of collectively decided on by our various investor groups in Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba coming up in the fall. So we've raised over $7 million in capital. We've syndicated 44 deals. Another interesting note is that there's 15 winning deals and 29 side deals. So what that means is that there's not just one company that gets invested in every summit. We've always seen over 2 companies in each stream get invested into, because the investors over the 8-week period get really excited about the cool companies that are coming out of our local areas, and they want to invest in more than just the winners. So yeah, it's been a ton of fun being part of the process, and I'm looking forward to the fall summit. Flip to the next one there, Zach. And in terms of the organizing team, I think all of these folks are in the chat here on Zoom, so feel free to say hi. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this, but everybody will get a chance to chat. There's a ton of fun people in the group, and they're a great gang to work with. It's going to be fun to meet you all at the happy hours in our respective cities and at the finales for the various events coming up over the next little while. And then for you folks, and just a quick reminder here, I threw it in the chat, but please feel free to ask a question, come off mute, raise your hand. There's the reaction button at the bottom, or ask a question in the chat, because it's way more fun than just hearing us ramble on. But here, so why join us for the investment summit? So from your side, if you look at other angel groups or VCs where there is no sort of ability to sort of corral in your time, we have a set process. So our summit kicks off on the 22nd of September and it wraps up on the 17th of November. So the due diligence process and the investment decision is going to be made sometime in that 8 weeks. So you know that by November 17th, you're going to have an answer whether you're going to get investment from Startup TNT. We get the benefits of having 30 plus local accredited investors that are passionate about the space investing with you, but it only shows up as one entity on your cap table. So that keeps it nice and clean. And those 30 people have backgrounds in all sorts of different industries. They can open doors in terms of customers, suppliers. They can take mentorship positions if they've done something similar to what you're doing. There's a lot of really cool stuff that happens organically throughout the process. We try to provide feedback to everybody that wants it, so you can opt in for that. So right from the top 20 stage onwards, we give some feedback as to sort of general investor thoughts, pros and cons about the cool things that you're doing and areas that you can improve. And Brad exposure. I think I looked this morning, and the last finale had like 600 views on YouTube. Plus, we had 160 people in Calgary, another couple hundred people in Saskatchewan and Edmonton. So it's a great way, especially for early stage companies, to get your brand out there in a decent sized network, and to get some exposure for your company and some of the cool work that you're doing. With that, I think we're going off to Gloria in Manitoba next.
Hey, everybody. So good to see you all. As Neil said, my name is Gloria Tom. I am the newest addition to the local leads team for TNT. I started off as an angel investor in the Spring Summit in Saskatchewan, and now I've taken on the role of local lead in Manitoba, and we are anticipating a really great first summit here. So I'm going to jump into the goals that we have for Summit 6. Like I said, we're going into our first investment summit with Manitoba, and we're very excited for that. I would like to, highlight that we've raised $7 million for 50 startups in Alberta and Saskatchewan since 2019, and we've now grown to the point where it's an achievable goal for us to be able to raise $1 million plus per summit. That's the goal for this fall, through a combination of the money that is raised not only through the syndicates in each province, but also through individual and syndicated side deals as well. Take it to the next slide. Really excited to talk about this. We're currently working hard to raise a $5 million venture capital fund. You can obviously see here some of the reasons that we have this fund in place, but I just want to spotlight that for the winner of each summit, this fund places an additional $50,000 on top of the money that is raised through the Angel Syndicate. And that, raises the entire amount of money raised for that winning startup. Also just want to spotlight the fact that this fund really acts as a mechanism for the venture partners to follow on and support the winning startups through onto their Series A funding round. Venture partners often have a lot of knowledge and sector-specific experience that's super valuable to founders as they continue through the life cycle of their company. I'm going to switch here to talk a little bit about the fit. Our investment summits are a really good fit for startups who are pursuing scaling their operations and are now at a stage where they are looking to raise capital outside of family and friends. Important to note here that startups should not feel like they don't qualify just because you currently identify as pre-revenue. Roughly 50% of our winners are at the pre-revenue stage, and we certainly welcome companies at this stage to apply. And passing it on.
Yeah, back to Saskatchewan. Thanks, Gloria. It's great to have you on the team and to have Manitoba on board. Very exciting. I'm Jesse Weeb, and I am the local lead for Saskatchewan. I joined as an investor in this Spring Summit of 2021 in the Edmonton pool. The winner was on a store, and then since then I've run 3 more summits with TNT, 2 here in Saskatchewan, the Clean Tech Summit. So this is really exciting to go into my 5th summit here with TNT, and we kind of run the same process every time. You've got the applications open, the top 20 pitch night, and the finale night is sort of the big public sort of key dates, but there's some other key dates you should be aware of there. The top 20 selection night, that's going to happen on September 27th. You're going to get the notification if you've made the top 20 or not, so that you can start preparing for that pitch night. And then that top 10 selection, we don't publicly announce this, and we also going to say this, like, do not publicly announce it either if you end up making the top 10. The only things we like to announce are the 20 and the 5. But at the 10 stage, that's when you're going to get into a little bit more intensive due diligence, and we're going to talk about what that looks like in just a minute. And then that top 5 selection stage, that's when you're going to need to start preparing for that summit finale night, making sure your pitch is ready to go, and making sure if you're going to need to travel into one of our main locations, which are going to be in Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, and Winnipeg, make sure you guys start getting ready for the travel into to pitch live, because we would love if everybody could pitch live at the summit finale night. It's way more fun. So try to maybe stick those things in your calendar now and set that goal for yourself to make it all the way to the end. Yeah, and just so you know, yeah, Regina for Saskatchewan, the top 20 is going to be in person in Regina. There'll be a small satellite party in Saskatoon, but the majority of people will be in Regina for that. So we mentioned earlier, Neil said, hey, it's awesome. We got one line item on the cap table. How does it actually work in terms of the vehicle that we're investing with? Well, it's a limited partnership, so it's similar to how a VC fund is structured. As you said, each of the investors have pre-committed $5,000 each to their streams winner. So there's Edmonton investors pre-committed to Edmonton winner, Saskatchewan investors are pre-committed to the Saskatchewan winner, and then same across all of this. At the very end, all of it gets syndicated into one deal, including any top-ups, the VC fund, all of that gets syndicated into one deal. So it's one line item on your cap table. Keep it nice and simple. And then we've got a system in place to allow easy communication back with all of your investors. And we'll get a lead investor in place to keep that relationship going. But if you have any additional questions about the structure, we can absolutely get to that. Now we're at the end, depending on what people want. But I'll just keep going through, Zach. I think covered all that. And then here's the other important part. So how are we going to be making these decisions? This is really important to note, is that every investor has a say if they want it. Some investors are a little more passive, but the majority of our investors are active and they're voting. So you want to try to just tell a story and build relationships with the investors, and so that you get a majority of them that choose you at each stage. So the first stage, it's just a simple ranking. They're going to kind of rank hard yes through hard no if they want to continue looking at your company and see the pitch. That's at that top 20 pitch night. They're going to review your application, your pitch deck, and any materials that you share with us. So I highly encourage those that when you're submitting your pitch deck, this should be like your leave behind pitch deck. You can have additional writing. It doesn't have to be the same pitch deck that you actually end up pitching with. You can change that, right? So think about that with that top 20 stage. When you're getting into the later stage of the top 10, the top 5, and then the winner, it's all a ranked ballot system. So every investor ranks them, 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, and they get points based on their ranking, and then we add up all those points, and that's how we determine who the winner is. Important to note that the tiebreaker, that has happened a couple times at TNT at the very end with the winner. It's the most number 1 votes that takes it away at the very end. But often if it's that close, that means the number 2 company is going to get a deal anyway, because everybody wants to get in on the deal. So very exciting, and make sure you're telling a succinct story so that the investors can all come on board and vote your company high. With that, let's pass it back over to Jillian in Edmonton.
Hello. My name is Jillian, and I'm the YEG Edmonton lead here. I was the second to the last one to join the lead team just recently with Gloria. So we're basically came in together. And I come from not an investor angle. I come from an entrepreneur angle. That's my background. So I'm more kind of in your camp. And that's why I really want to talk about due diligence, because this is something that is probably one of the most important parts of the whole process. You're pitching. Yes, pitching is important too, but if you can actually bomb one of your pitches, but if you have a good setup and the due diligence process is really great, then you could still win. You could still get side deals. There's all kinds of opportunities that can happen because if you have everything set up for the investors properly, they will notice that. So it's a process that basically goes on some level from the application stage, because when the investors do that first cut to the top 20, it's it's light, yes, but there is some kind of due diligence that happens during that. Top 10 also is generally pretty light with the due diligence. You might start off with some coffee meetings, like one of the lead investors might typically schedule those meetings, and you might just go out for coffee with them, or maybe a Zoom call, something quick like that. It's kind of like getting to know them and them getting to know you. And then you might have some conference meetings. It could be any of these things or just like a couple of them. We'll see. It just depends on kind of what process you go through. So the conference meetings could be in like a conference room like I'm in, and you could be that like pink guy in the background. It could be with a group. It could be with one person. That's something that's maybe a little bit more in depth than the coffee meetings. Reference follow-ups. So you may want to provide some good references. We had one company who did not win last time in Edmonton, but they did get a really good side deal, 0 Point Cryogenics. We received letters, a lot of letters from like the University of Alberta, because they worked at the University of Alberta, that actually relinquished the rights to the IP. So that they gave us the letter so that our investors knew that the IP actually was owned by 0 Point Cryogenics and not the University of Alberta. So these are the kinds of things you want to think about getting prepared for that process. It also could just be a quick phone call, a Zoom meeting, whatever it is. You provide those references, and they'll follow up on that. And then so also there's something, I'm actually going to take it down and go into more of that demo IP reviews. That's something kind of what I just mentioned. Could be demonstrations of your product. It could be reviews of your IP. You want to make sure you get all that information together. And I'm actually going to jump over to the left, and that information is really great. If you can start getting it together now and actually prepare your virtual data room like as soon as possible, because that the better that is, and you don't want to be like really pushing at the end to just like have that crunch period where you're just trying to get everything to the investors, because if you get that together sooner than later, then you can be more thorough and you can be a little bit more relaxed during the process, and you can maybe focus a little bit more on your pitches. Yeah, the top 5 could be really, during that period, you really want to populate it well, but in just the beginning, it could just be really light, just start getting some things in there. And then, it's something that you're like, okay, what if I get cut during the end? Well, and like you got this data room together, but if you're raising money for the next 3 to 6 months, or in the next 3 to 6 months, you are going to need that data room. So you need it for yourself. It helps you gather your thoughts. It helps put your information together so that you can raise money in the future. And then that deal structure negotiations, that generally happens in the final 2 weeks. Some people ask, are there any prescribed terms? No, we don't really have a standard, but we do encourage people to use safe notes. And most of those meetings are done virtually. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Sorry, that was a mouthful just because I wanted to make sure that I go through that properly, because it's all very important. Thank you. So the education resources to prepare. So we provide a lot of resources. So the Summit Education Series, that is something that we facilitate as leads. They're not mandatory, they're optional, but I would say they're highly recommended if you want to be educated and you want to like get the most out of your experience. You can use these resources a la carte, like you don't have to be going and doing everything. So that, like the Summit Education Series, for example, that happens every Thursday, we're going to be doing about 5 weeks of those. It's Thursday, September 22nd through Thursday, October 27th, if I have that correct. I hope that's right. And then the pitching, these happen at our super fun events. We can, there's like the peer-to-peer pitch practice that we have available to you. You can review past pitches on YouTube. And then according to Zach, Kevin Dahl is amazing. And you probably want to check out that pitch boot camp. And then you've got your data due diligence rooms, education sessions. So again, as I said, I'm trying to nail that home for you, is that like that really is important. So I would highly recommend showing up for that. Arden is a local guy in Edmonton. He's super awesome, really engaging, and has a great presentation for that. I think that's it. And then we can go to the next one. Thanks, Neil. So these are the big public events. We call them electric because they're so fun. So just like our little startup TNT sign behind Jesse there. So on October 6th, the top 20 pitch night is happening. It's a public pitch night and after parties. The after parties, of course, we all know that they're really fun if you go to our happy hours. It's happening in, I'm sorry, I'm from out of the country. YQR, that's Regina, right? Okay, good. Sorry. I always have that moment where I'm like, oh yeah, what's that airport code? Okay. So it's streamed over Zoom and YouTube. We highly recommend that you show up in person. If you have to Zoom in, that's fine. We know, especially in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, that some of you are more spread out. So you might want to just come to that remotely. But for the summit finale, which is going to happen like in Saskatchewan, it's going to be happening in Saskatoon. You want to make sure that you're there in person, because it's really, I mean, if you have to, if like you have COVID, of course you don't want to go in person, but like if you do come up in person, you are going to have lots of opportunity for meeting investors, meeting other entrepreneurs. It's a great place to like make a lot of connections and develop some of your community. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass it off to our local Edmonton Ukrainian dancer and / co-founder of Startup TNT, Tim Lin. There, you take it away, please.
I'll take that as an intro. Thanks, second resident American. Founder Etiquette. What's going on? I just want to be clear. This is not a business plan competition. This is not a pitch competition. This is a deal screening process with real investors putting their real money on the line and deciding as a group who to be investing into. And so these are not judges when you're having these meetings. These are people that are trying to understand what you're talking about. Some of them from your industry that will ask, we'll say, relatively deep questions, and others that are not from your industry that will be asking questions that are probably a reflection of not having enough time to share the story in as much depth as you would like. The point of this is, you can read the words. The point of this is, don't get frustrated with questions. The questions are generally a reflection of storytelling not being in the path that some people would like it to be able to understand what's going on, or for you to be able to expand on what you've thought about so that you can convince them that what you have is awesome. Try to be not defensive. Further, it's also not a zero-sum game, as we were talking about. There's more side deals than there are winners. If you go back, there was 15 winners and 35 side deals. So more than twice as many side deals as winners. Work with your fellow entrepreneurs, show up to the events, be friendly, show up to the happy hours, be a part of the community. And the whole point is, our motto is have fun, make friends, build companies. If you can make friends with the investors, the whole point of this is that, when you're raising that $500K, $1.5 million round in the VCs, like go and just like find rich people and have them invest, because, we write big checks and you're not there yet. This is the go make friends with rich people part of the process. We're putting them in front of you, and it's your job to make friends with them. If you're a dick to them, they won't invest in you. That's the really short part of it. So there we go. That's the founder etiquette. Don't be a dick. Communication. We'll send you weekly email updates. Obviously, you saw the funnel. So we'll be, applications are open now until September 20th. We'll then make a chop down to top 20. So if you're, say, company number 21 through 40, you'll be informed relatively quickly that you're not going to be proceeding, which is unfortunate. But again, don't be discouraged. Come to the events. All of the investors will be there. All the other entrepreneurs will be there. Be part of the community. And then similarly, the process will be outlined in a weekly email about what's coming next and the latest and greatest, and top, the pitch night and top 10 and top 5 and the finale. And then, as Jesse said, sign up to the newsletter as well, because you'll be able to keep an ear on the ground as to the people that are showing up to the happy hour and what's going on. And then, of course, entrepreneur resource base. We'll point to things explicitly in the in those weekly email updates and in the info package and stuff like that. But of course, also take a peek at our YouTube. There's a whole bunch of education sessions that are on there, and our website as well. We have blog posts and stuff like that. We have things from VCs. We have things from service providers. We have things from all over the place. So how to build a data room, how to do a pitch deck, how to do, what is venture debt, what is all of these sorts of things. We have a whole bunch of resources that can help you out. So next. And then if you have questions, of course, look at these 4 beautiful faces running things for us across the prairies. Zach and I are I'll describe us as useless compared to them. So please reach out to them. They're super helpful. They're on the ground. They know what's going on. They know who to point you to. Zach and I barely know Edmonton at this point, but if you want to talk about what's going on in your local community, talk to them. If you have questions about the process and stuff like that, reach out to your friends at startuptnt.com. The good lad sitting to my left will be able to help you out and point you in the right direction there, or triage it and point you to one of the leads. And then of course, startuptnt.com/summit to be able to register, to toss your application in. If you go through the step of like putting your name and your email in to be able to open up the form, we'll obviously see that you've done that. That's kind of the point of a splash page. And then we'll be able to follow up with you a little bit closer to, in case it's sort of, everybody has a bajillion balls in the air. And so if you do that step at the very least, then we'll be able to ping you a couple times between now and September 20th to be able to get that application across the line. But do keep in mind, it's the heaviest lift is of course the pitch deck. But if you've built one already, that application is maybe 10 minutes. It's mostly some identifying information, a quick bio about what you're doing, what you're raising, some of your like boot camps or accelerators or stuff you've been a part of, and uploading the pitch deck. That's the application. We try and keep it pretty simple. So yeah, anyways, and if you have any questions, of course, please reach out. Or, of course, toss them in the chat here, come off mute. Yeah, Zach, back to you.
Happy hours are happening tonight. All right, guys, that took us right to 12:30. Sorry, what time is it? Why is it there? 10:30? It's 12:30 for me. I hope a lot of you can join us tonight. Thanks, everybody. That was a really good overview. I do think that we should maybe discuss a few common questions that come up. Entrepreneurs, you guys have any questions that came to your mind? You can come up mute and ask them. I'm going to kick it off with two that I have that I know come up every single summit. And maybe some of the other leads can kind of share their best practices around both of these questions. So first one, intellectual property and confidentiality. This comes up for entrepreneurs all the time. What are we okay to share with the investors? What is confidential? What isn't? Who wants to kind of share like some guiding principles on dealing with confidential information?
So I'll say off the hop, our investors are bound by in the limited partnership agreement, there's a confidentiality agreement in there. So you're not gonna, they're not gonna like come to a meeting with you and then start tweeting about information that you have. Like, this is a great idea. If somebody else in the world should do this, like that's not, obviously that will lead to shitty deal flow for us. So we do not do that. Further, on IP and sort of like what should we include in the data room? If you have, the key reason to have an NDA in place with somebody that you're sharing information with is to protect unfiled intellectual property. Because once you share it, of course, it then becomes public domain and makes it challenging to be able to file IP. Other than that, or maybe some super sensitive customer names or potential partners or stuff like that. But by and large, I would err on the side of sharing as much as is reasonably possible without the need of an NDA to be able to get the investors on board. It's a super delicate balance because, of course, you want to not share because you want to be able to protect what's going on in your world. But then if you protect too much, then you'll be viewed as cagey and not, open to be building a relationship and stuff like that. And so then you have that side. And then if you overshare, then, it's like, well, maybe you don't really have the best judgment on what to be sharing. And then that's, of course, a little tricky as well. And so, best about what the IP is that's sitting around your table. In many cases, it's a pretty open book. But in some cases, it's valuable to, happy to have a conversation or, you know your stuff better than us, but ideally we don't do NDAs for data rooms or anything like that as a blanket. You could do one-offs with people, and we use 0 Point Cryogenics as an example. They were spinning out IP from the U of A. They did a site tour, and we were looking at unfiled IP. And so there were some individuals that signed an NDA, and they were the ones that looked at things and then relayed that back to the group. But yeah, try to keep things a relatively open book.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind through the whole process, just to elaborate on Tim's point there is, this is in a big way a relationship building and a trust building exercise between the entrepreneurs and the investors. So, just be practical. Like, you don't need to roll in with your full data room before you even meet the investors. Like, you can kind of move. You need to build trust over time, and you can sort of escalate how much you're going to share as you build trust. But to Tim's point, ideally your data room contains information that people don't have to sign an NDA for. And usually that really only becomes an issue for those intellectual property questions, which is applicable to probably some of you. So if you're particularly concerned about it, feel free to reach out to one of us to kind of talk it through. Okay, well, actually, why don't we, as a follow-up to that, why don't we talk a little bit about data rooms in general? Because this is actually, I think, one of the big things one of the biggest values that people often get through this process, whether they raise money or not, is they come out of it with an understanding of their business way better than they had before they started the process as an entrepreneur. And how to build a data room, which you can think of as basically an online folder that contains all the key information about your business, which is important for investors making a decision, but it's important for you to just kind of like build all that out for yourself, for your own business. Now, it's also, just to be clear, like Tim is actually the one that created our data room checklist. And Tim, how many line items are there on your data room checklist that you could, in theory, put in that data room?
I mean, that it's a trimmed down version of like private equity diligence. So you can get quite exhaustive, but like, there's key items and then there's a whole bunch of nice to haves. Like having your corporate items to prove that this is actually a company and they're not just shipping money to like your personal bank account and then you're going to go to fly to Mexico. That's like one, having an actual plan around like, you're asking for money. So a financial model that describes what you're planning on doing with it and what the future looks like. The deck, the deal documents, like some of the pretty table stakes type stuff. And then there's a whole bunch of nice to haves that can exist around, if you have financial history, if you've been selling things, and there's a whole bunch of data that you can go into there. If you've been doing product development, you can go into a whole bunch of data there. You can like write down a whole bunch of plans and stuff like that. And there's different ways to communicate that too. Some of it is storytelling, some of it is in-person conversations and stuff like that. But yeah, that was a long answer. The answer to the question.
Julian brought up the
100 lines.
Potentially 300 lines, like because they're kind of built for more established companies. So keep that in mind. Like you're not going to be able to put everything that's on the data room checklist in your data room. And part of the thing is like figuring out what makes sense for you in your stage. And so Jillian brought up in her section, like kind of like the timing of when to build a data room, and just be really clear on everybody about like kind of when the investors are usually going to expect to ask for it. It's after you have the first coffee meeting. So like if you're in the top 20, you'll do the pitch night, you'll do a coffee meeting. And at some point after that, usually around if you're in the top 10 or maybe going into the top 10, that's when the investors will ask for it. But then there's the question of like, when should you start building it? So I will say some people wait until they basically get confident because they haven't built the data room yet. Some people wait and they're like, I'll build my data room if I'm in the top 10. And then it's a bit of a scramble to get it together. But it's also a lot of work to build it if, you're not in the top 10. So there's like a bit of a trade-off there. I don't know, Neil or Jesse or anyone else, what do you guys suggest for people how to think about that challenge?
Yeah, I agree completely. It should be like a process that started at the earliest stage of your company where you have a folder where you just start putting in as you accrue those documents and plans and stuff. Just keep putting them in a consistent place because it can be a lot of work to formulate in a weekend or in over a couple of days if you really need to have it shown to somebody on a Monday or something like that. So that's my suggestion, to start early because you'll need it eventually. It's not just for startup GT, you're going to need it.
I completely agree. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about the data room? Because like this is probably I'd say one of the most critical components of the entire process. Your data room pretty much tells the whole story of your company. Like you do a lot of the talking, but once the investors start looking at the data room and looking at the numbers, that really starts to tell the story. So if you have any questions about this, please do not hesitate to ask. This is your opportunity. Or anything else. You can ask about anything else. You got a quiet bunch today.
Yeah, I do want maybe one note on the data room. It can be pretty intimidating for people. So both the data room checklist and links to past kind of like seminars we've given on the data rooms. We have a library of those. And we actually are going to be doing we plan to do another one as part of the Entrepreneur Education series in probably early October to kind of talk about the data room. And again, it's an exhaustive list. So, start thinking about it now, start looking at like maybe where you're at. But it does take time to build it. So,
maybe like to part of it is a checklist type, like, some of the like documents around, do you have a real company and stuff like that, or like sort of a check the box exercise. Some of it is storytelling around, the financial model, the pitch deck, some of the like future plans, and like, have you thought through stuff? And then honestly, another big part of it is a building trust exercise with the investors, where it's like, oh damn, they're organized and like they have all of this stuff together, like they've like clearly thought through stuff. I have a whole bunch of confidence, and if I don't even have to ask a whole bunch of questions, because clearly they're 3 steps ahead of me. And so if you're well prepared, you get that level of, you can just build trust asynchronously through sharing this thing. Or it's like, here's 3 documents, I don't really know what's going on, I don't really care that much, and it's like, well, probably not exactly the best trust building exercise, and there's a whole range in between. So
that does go a long way. I'll second that point. Having that, especially having like a bit of like a data room table of contents, or like kind of like at the beginning to kind of coordinate it, like this is where everything's located. Really, really helpful. Okay. I'm worried we might be boring the group with the data room conversation. But are there any other questions related to the data room or just the process in general? We can also, what we like to do is introduction. So if we're done kind of like thinking through like the questions we have, at some point here, we'll probably cut the live stream, and then we can just do like casual introductions around the room. But Eva has a question here. The YouTube link to your last data room checklist for the videos. Yeah, I don't know if anybody, I think it's in the, it's right in the slides. If anybody can just grab that for us and post in the chat there. I think there's probably like a 190-minute video that Tim and I did with Brendan about a year ago that was very helpful. And then, yeah, there's also the up-to-date checklist, which is, I think, structured as a Google sheet. Both of those are actually quite helpful. Good thing to kind of review if you're looking for something fun to do over the long weekend. Yeah, that's a good way to enrich your weekend. But maybe the other thing on there is like, you're preparing your applications right now. So the data room is important, but think about like the first step is to get people to take an interest in the deal. So, having good storytelling, good clean storytelling in your application and your pitch deck is kind of step 1 for you. Thanks, Jonah. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, if nobody wants to ask more questions, we're going to go to introductions. We got about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, which is always a fun way to do it. All right, team is sharing a lot of good resources. There are a lot of really good resources out there in general. If you're looking for resources on like how people are pitching, the Startup TNT YouTube channel has a massive pitch library. So of local pitches that you can reference. All right, do you guys want to do intros? Let's do it. Okay. Now, our team has kind of introduced themselves already. So what I'll do is maybe I'll do people that didn't speak first. And so maybe just keep the short name, organization, and quick little, like try and keep it less than a minute for sure. I think less than a minute will work.